Anthem was a video game. It feels really bad to say, but it's true. Bioware is a name that used to rank amongst the upper echelon of video game developers. The name evokes some of the best releases of the 90s and 2000s: Baldur's Gate, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age Origins, the Mass Effect trilogy. RPGs that helped to keep the genre in the mainstream eye during a time when first-person shooters were everything. They had interesting, in-depth characters you could interact with, vast worlds to explore, and in some cases, branching paths where the things you did matter. Maybe a little basic by ye olde 2026 standards, but still, some of the stuff you could do in KOTOR felt big, even if it had barely any consequences. Bioware was considered a critical darling that could do no wrong. Besides Sonic Chronicles, I guess, and a name that meant quality, until EA did their thing. Which brings us to February 22nd, 2019, the release date of Anthem. Bioware and Electronic Arts' big, always-online, third-person shooter, open-world, loot-based games as a service. Kinda like Destiny, which is exactly the type of game I'd expect from Bioware. Hot off the heels of the mixed reception Mass Effect Andromeda and a slew of cancellations, Anthem failed to meet sales expectations, has the lowest review score of every Bioware game released, a dropped 2.0 edition, and is no longer something you can play. A massive shame. Which of course meant I wanted to take a closer look. What really was Anthem? So, we beat it. 100%, all the trophies, got the platinum, all the extra content they added over the year before dropping support. Y'all wanna talk gear score? It's pretty high. Not to mention we read the official tie-in comic book. I just couldn't get the official Anthem app to work, so if you wanted to hear me talk about the guild system, I'm sorry. It's been about 7 years. The game is offline, so if you never got a chance to play it, strap into the Javelin, don the title of freelancer, and quote, prepare to face Anthem's dangerous world. A world that, despite 5 million copies sold, never came.
Stop whining.
So yo, it's Austin, and today we're finally gonna tackle Anthem 100%. Not so you don't have to, but because you can't anymore. I'd tossed around the idea of covering this in the past, thinking that it would be around a bit longer, but with 7 years on the belt, that went a lot faster than I thought. So we've got a lot to get into. But before we get started, today's video has been sponsored by Zen Market. Zen Market is a proxy shipping service for those who are looking to buy and ship goods directly from Japanese websites. The kind of stuff you aren't normally able to get overseas, maybe something that requires a Japanese address. For instance, imported video games. I am fascinated with the sheer amount of video games that didn't release in the English language, some of which are region free and will play in your consoles. Well, type it up in Zen Market. You can narrow it down to the retailer as well, to like Rakuten, Mercari, Amazon Japan, or even specialty shops like Surugaya. And well, there you go. Pick which one you want. Zen Market only charges 500 yen per item for the proxy service. Create yourself a parcel with multiple items to save on shipping, and then get to enjoying your stuff. Zen Market allows you to have 60 days of free storage in case you're looking to get multiple things, and it's really easy to use. It uses 19 different languages with good customer service and supports over 10,000 Japanese stores, so as long as it's eligible to be shipped overseas, you can probably get it. I've used Zen Market a few times myself. That's how I got City Shrouded in Shadow, a game I covered in the past. So if you've got the itch, sign up using my link down below and you'll get started with 1,000 Zen points. That's about 1,000 yen off of international shipping. Use my promo code AustinEruption on Zen Market today. Thanks to Zen Market for the sponsor, but for now, it's time for the main event. As of January 12th, 2026, Anthem is no longer something you can play. However, way before any of this, back in 2012, a little game codenamed Dylan was just getting started. That's Dylan, as in Bob Dylan, by the way, as Bioware was hoping it would have a long-lasting legacy similar to the famous musician. Anthem is a game that had its development cycle and creation process wrung out by various interviews, news articles, and videos all over the internet, so we'll focus a bit more on the game itself. But TLDR, Anthem was put into the oven shortly after Mass Effect 3 by its original producer, Casey Hudson. It was pitched to Electronic Arts as a different idea for Bioware, using games as a service elements and min-maxing money, essentially what we'd see out of Destiny. This project, tentatively named Beyond, struggled with gaining proper direction and was cooking for over half a decade before finally being officially revealed in 2017. During that time frame, several key developers, including Casey Hudson, had left Bioware, and wildly, the idea of the exosuits flying around had been removed and re-added to the project several times. I can't even imagine. So, shoot forward to to E3 2017, it's time for the big reveal. Initially revealed at the EA Play Conference, remember when everyone was doing these, but also a bigger gameplay video, that's gameplay in quotations, was shown at the Microsoft Showcase. And what we saw was a Frostbite logo, a first-person showcase to a crowded market that ended up being the game's main hub, Fort Tarsis, and the most E3 gameplay you could imagine.
Bam, looking good. Nice, you've got a mortar equipped.
Yeah, I got it on the weekend.
As you'd think, the reception to this was confusion. Mass Effect Andromeda had become a punching bag for its glitchy state at release, and this initial trailer seemed to lack the character-driven charm of previous Bioware releases. People were interested, but seeing as Destiny 2 was months away, a little less impressed. It sure was nice to look at, though. Between this reveal and launch, a bunch more key staff would leave Bioware. Reports came out stating poor leadership, teams being split in all sorts of directions, increasing tension, and apparently most of the game being developed in the year prior to release. Needing a bit more time, Anthem received a few delays, including missing its targeted holiday 2018 release. EA then refused to allow it to be delayed past March 2019, so what we got hit store shelves extremely close to the deadline, February 22nd, 2019. A game that was immediately put under a microscope and smacked with the bad review stick. Launch was plagued with all sorts of bugs, a notable difference in visual quality from those E3 reveals to retail, mission mechanics, and the inability to see what loot you get until you leave the mission. But the big stickler seemed to be a lack of a story, interesting characters, and a clear reason to be doing what you're doing on this mysterious planet, Coda. Essentially, if you played all of Anthem, you were probably still confused as to what Anthem was. Bioware and EA saw the reception and decided after a few seasonal updates to put a pause on it in order to try and do a substantial revamp. Similarly to Final Fantasy XIV's A Realm Reborn or Fortnite Battle Royale. EA claimed their commitment to improving the game up to Bioware standards, so in February 2020, they stopped all updates. And well, another year after this, February 24th, 2021, it was announced all work on Anthem was to be halted and the developers were moving over to Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Unfortunately, that'd be that. They kept the servers on for almost another 5 years, announced in July 2025 they'd be axing them, and considering all the content of Anthem is server-based, it's unplayable. So thankfully, I went ahead and did every single thing you can do in the game now. For science, I guess. The version of Anthem I'm playing is 1.7.0. It had a handful of decent fixes and updates from the original, so we're gonna be taking a look at the game in its final state. But don't worry, there's still plenty of glitches for everyone. And by everyone, I mean mostly me, because going through the main story was a bit of a single-player wasteland. I couldn't E3 with the squad.
All right, let's do this.
See you on the other side.
Alrighty, here we go. Bioware is a company famous for their world building and characters and all of the narrative stuff. So let's take a look at Anthem's side of that. What exactly is Anthem? The answer is a little less exciting than you'd hope. We start right in the action. The intro basically says, this planet's pretty dangerous. There's all these wild ancient relics all over the place which can create the Anthem of Creation. Ancestors built Javelins as defense weapons to face these relics that are able to freely shape the land, and that's about it. Essentially, ancient machines created by Shapers, a race of people seen as godlike. You're a freelancer. You hop into danger to fight uncertain perils on this planet. It's all very vague, but there's a lot more lore in the Codex. Stuff about humanity being enslaved by a race known as the Urgoth, who we'll get back to later, just really briefly. You're thrown headfirst right into the fight alongside Halleck and Faye. Similarly to Mass Effect or Dragon Age, you're given a title that people call you by, freelancer in this case. Like, imagine if everyone just called you by your job title in real life. You've got your team of dudes, and you're headed into the Heart of Rage to deactivate the Cenotaph relic. Essentially, we've got to stop this thing from doing stuff. Sure, you fly in, get messed up immediately, lose all your basic movement, and get metroided through a tutorial, but not before turning off motion blur. The first thing I notice, well, besides some of the insane visual glitches, is that the raw gameplay of Anthem feels solid. Movement is fun, the guns feel good to shoot. The sound design on headphones is pretty satisfying, and visually this game holds up. Like, you'd be forgiven in thinking that Anthem was a PS5 release based off how expensive it all looks. They certainly didn't skimp on the presentation, especially on PC. Anyways, your squad gets overrun, the mission fails, interpersonal conflict about what to do, and then zip, forward 2 years later. Freelancers aren't seen as heroes anymore, and you're basically a mercenary in Fort Tarsis. Enter Tutorial Mission 2. Still a freelancer, albeit a bit run down and dirty. You do contract missions with your new cipher, Owen. Ciphers are basically psychic sensitive people who can communicate with the Anthem of Creation, who provide support from an amplifier chair. Kinda similar to Joker from Mass Effect, but if he was a psyker. Anyways, go do some stuff and find yourself thrown into the deep end immediately as you prevent a cataclysm event right off the bat. It's a way to show that the freelancer is a seasoned, cool guy as you try and rebuild trust with the populace of Fort Tarsis. A relatively simple premise, kinda similar to Mass Effect 1 actually, but one that could be really expanded on with good characters and interactions. However, most of the NPCs around Fort Tarsis aren't interactable. There's just a handful of characters, mostly shop owners, who will yap at you. There's Sainra, Zoe, Tassin, Yarrow, all of which have very limited lines of dialogue, as in you pick one of two options, most of which will have little to no effect on any kind of character growth. There's no visible relationship meters, no bonuses, or dateable characters, the Bioware staple. Just a few lines of dialogue when it spawns on the map. A bit disappointing. A majority of the storytelling is essentially you helping out the city while fighting off various gangs that inhabit the planet Coda, popping back to the fort for a few lines of dialogue, maybe the next monologue about where to go next, and occasionally a first-person cutscene where Owen tries to be quirky while mogging the camera the entire time. And I do mean the entire time.
It seems I've become a bit of a celebrity.
You and I, we're such a solid team already.
And I think we'll agree that I was pretty fantastic.
Oh,
Who acts like this? And well, that's it basically. Have some relatively uninteresting dialogue with uninteresting NPCs, go out and do some stuff, come back, rinse repeat until another story beat happens. All while NPCs talk without changing their neutral stance. Owen's hands will be on his hips, and since there's no camera angle swapping between you and him like in other Bioware games, it feels off, which is doubly strange considering you get to pick a face for your character. But it's not like the dialogue's that great either.
Okay, so that happened.
Yeah, this was never said in the MCU, but it was said in Anthem. Eventually, you stumble upon the main villain of the story, a Dominion faction leader named the Monitor. This dude's got cool armor, a cool cloak, looks very much like a Destiny NPC, and is doing big bad things in the name of turning the Anthem of Creation into a weapon. This is one bad dude.
Negotiations have concluded.
From here, it's all politics, name dropping, and keywords. The agents of Corvus, an intelligence agency of Bastion, a nation in Coda, has Tassin hire you to try and reach the Cenotaph before the Monitor and his goons can find it, which means you've got to rejoin up with Halleck and Faye, who you've been estranged from since the Heart of Rage incident. So, it's off to do exactly that. A lot of Anthem's story feels like events happening without any personal stakes. You spend such a short time with Halleck and Faye in the beginning that there's no reason for the player to feel much of anything upon the reunion, and yet here I am eating weird bugs in the first-person perspective, trying to gain their favor again. Frankly, the story of Anthem is, as the reviews stated, lackluster. It's there, it's serviceable, but hardly memorable, and that's probably because in comparison to the actual gameplay segments, it's like I'm playing a totally different game. Speaking of, let's move on to the meat of everything. The Javelins, the gameplay, the guns, and the open world. I'll come back to you in a minute.
Get glitched.
This may come as a little unexpected, but if we're looking at like the pure gameplay aspects of Anthem, like the running and shooting, I think that it's incredibly good. I don't think another video game has truly captured the like Iron Man aspects, before or after, and that includes Iron Man VR. Mostly because I'd probably get sick. PS VR 2 port win. The moment-to-moment feeling you have when playing Anthem is one of strength. You feel powerful with a whole slew of attack options at your disposal. You can jump incredible heights, sometimes with a double depending on the class. You wield 2 weapons, you have 2 armor-mounted attacks, a melee weapon, and a special ultimate that charges up. Everyone can fly and hover, some of them longer than others. There's also several guns to pick from, with some of them having a unique take on an old concept. Like, there's 3 different sniper bases, one of which, the Devastator, is a charge-up explosive. Yeah, don't see that often. Not all of them are great. I'm not too into the charge-up shotgun when I could be blasting away with an autocannon, but the individual mounted weapons add a lot to the repertoire. These are different based on your javelins, so we might as well get into that. First up, the Ranger. This here's the jack of all trades, the one you see on the front of the box. Rangers get to use maces, which are an underrated weapon type. Rangers also use grenades and shoulder-mounted weapons, some of which pack an explosive punch. Clearly the starter pick for those who don't want to specialize into any specific style. And next up, the Colossus. It's in the name. It's the big heavy dude with the big heavy shield, one you can actually use as a weapon. Yep, Colossus Javelins have heavier versions of the shoulder launchers as well as some arm-mounted cannons. You're gonna be using mortars and crap tons of missile strikes. You're gonna be able to take a ridiculous amount of damage. It's not the most versatile, but whatever. Pop a melee when you're falling from the sky and deal massive AoE damage to 5 dudes at once. Here comes the Storm, my personal favorite, and not just because it has an awesome cloak, which is very cool. This mech suit is essentially a caster, apparently utilizing the raw energy of the Anthem in its holes, like actually the seals. It's the squishy javelin, but also one that can do this. Yeah, that feels good.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
The Storm is meant to float around and spam spells at the legions of enemies running on the ground. Kind of a hovering class, but one with a nice payoff. And lastly, there's the Interceptor. The fastest and least armored, the Interceptor is the Sonic the Hedgehog of javelins. Run and smack dudes with your dual blades, dash to the side to avoid getting hit, and do a triple jump because, sure, why not? The Interceptor's ultimate has you going invulnerable for a hot minute, where you'll dash around slashing dudes until there's nothing left on the field. It's probably my second favorite because of how engaging it felt, but honestly, all 4 of the machines were a blast to control. So basically, if you're in the middle of combat hitting legions of Scar, Dominion, or whatever enemy faction, Anthem is a really fun feeling game. There's enough variety in the enemies to make each encounter type unique, and the bosses have their own challenges, even if there's only a handful of them. It feels good, what can I say? Thankfully, moving around also feels good. When I said earlier I almost couldn't believe they didn't include flying, it's because of how seamless it feels in game. A quick jump and press of the left analog stick gets you zooming forward with a momentum-based engine heat level. If you're flying up, it's gonna consume more than going forward, and you'll actually slowly recover if you're going down. Need a quick cooldown? Fly under a waterfall or skim some water. That'll reset you to 0. You can swap between flying and hovering with the press of the right thumbstick, and it's extremely easy to zoom around the battlefield looking for vantage posts in a way that I don't think has really been done before. If you've got that explosive sniper, you can fly straight up, do a couple blasts, and then smack down with the fury of Zeus in a lightning bolt. I just, at a base level, really enjoy playing Anthem. It's just too bad that this is where that begins and ends, because as I mentioned earlier, Anthem is a games as a service. I hope y'all like numbers and gear score, because that's what we're talking about today. As you do missions, you'll find little diamond icons drop from the enemies. This is loot. This is randomly generated depending on your current level and the class you're playing, but you won't know what is what until you go back to Fort Tarsus. So yeah, the little bit from the E3 trailer with open world loot is not a thing. You basically set off into the open world on an expedition where you'll navigate a medium-sized map looking for icons of whatever main quests and contracts you've picked up. When you finish one, you'll be instanced into that level until you finish it, thrown into a results and XP screen, and given the option to leave or select another mission. The world map itself is relatively dense with a lot of collectibles to find, all of which will increase some number, give you experience points or little bits of codex. None of which is trackable on the map unless you get nearby, where it'll turn into a question mark icon on the minimap on the top of the screen, meaning it's really easy to not notice stuff in the environment you might need to grab for a platinum trophy, you feel? But also, looking at the screen, there's not a whole lot of variety. Despite Bastion being presented as a relatively diverse locale, a vast majority of what you see is foliage, rocks, and the occasional underground area. There's a few instance bits with ancient machinery, one area that's giving swamp, but if you look for like snow, desert, the tropics, anything but what's on the screen, That's tough. Though to be fair, that green, muddy, rocky area looked real good. Loot-wise, it's kind of 50-50. Those familiar with the gassy formula know you'll be spending a lot of time navigating menus to make sure you have the best gear in slot, and that is a slog for real. There are two, count them, 2 menus. One from pressing options, another for the touchpad. One is used for codex, quests, and challenge tracking, the other for equipping stuff and looking at the map. You can actually access the codex from the other menu if you're highlighting a weapon too, so you can like inception layers of menus. And this is all done, of course, by moving a circular cursor slowly across the screen because just pressing buttons was not in style. This is made worse when you're trying to track challenges. We'll get more into this during the platinum trophy grind, but there's a set of challenges you need for every weapon and gear piece for specific trophies, and taking a look at what you need is a painfully slow process that you'd be way better off just making a spreadsheet for. It's very clumsy. So take everything I've said so far, put it all together, and what you've got is an experience that is definitely disjointed. The only other bits of gameplay are instances of puzzles, most of which are designed to be extremely easy, like change the shape in front of you to the one you see in the background, or line up similar shapes, and just hope that your game's not phasing them in and out of existence. There's a lot of slow, uninteresting moments surrounding the bits of hype gameplay, and once you've gotten your hands dirty in combat for a couple of hours, you realize how dry it all is. I feel like Anthem, the video game, is a dry bowl of cereal. It's Cocoa Puffs without milk. Sure, you can crunch on the sugar balls for a little while, but at a certain point, you'll want some milk. Anthem is milkless. I feel like there's a really fun game trapped inside of the Anthem package. It's just a little too bloated with the gassy nonsense that we like to complain about. There's too little of a compelling narrative and not enough variety to really carry it through an entire experience. Which really sucks, because there's potential like everywhere. Which brings us to the end of the story. We know the setup, we know how the game feels now, so let's charge head first into the ending. We gotta talk about Owen. God damn Owen. He's one of the only characters to get a full character arc. Well, by full I mean like half done, considering it ends abruptly, but still. Owen is your trusty sidekick for a majority of the game, which is something he'd hate to be called. Owen wants to pilot a Javelin bad. And you'll repeatedly have conversations with him being like, hey man, you're not quite ready yet, your time will come. And he's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Hands permanently stationed on his hips, which of course means it's time for the Owen heel turn.
Javelin not working, huh? That's a shame. Click. Oh my God!
At a certain point, you're given a bunch of lore about a character from the past, General Helena Tarsis. She was the leader of the Legion of Dawn, a group of legendary heroes that existed 500 years in the past. They united humanity to fight against the deadly Urgoth, to survive the Heart of Rage, and eventually create Fort Tarsis. They'd eventually be split into multiple factions, the Sentinels, Freelancers, and Paladins, who'd also heel turn into the Dominion. This is only important because it's not a fun RPG story without a MacGuffin. This one being Tarsis' old Javelin, the Javelin of Dawn. So you go spelunking to find Tarsis' signet in her tomb, then unlock the Fortress of Dawn, the location of her last stand. You go through a set of trials where you reenact the end of Helena's life and stumble upon the big cool Javelin, only to have Owen go dollar store Anakin.
Come on, mates. Isn't it obvious? It is finally my time. No more waiting, no more putting me on the sideline.
This is like one of the 3 or 4 cutscenes where you can actually see your character's face, by the way. I think there's another, but for some reason I didn't spawn in.
Playtime's over. Give us the general.
No. We need to talk.
Upset for being second string junior varsity running back, you see Owen's insecurities grow a ton during cutscenes. This increases tenfold when you reconnect with Halleck and Faye, who just want to, help the main mission. Truthfully, it's a whole lot of characters butting heads and being like, I can't believe you did that thing 2 years ago, and I'm not sure I trust you yet. Doing a mission and then being like, yeah, old pal, we did it, while Owen literally sulks in the corner, or tries to fly a javelin in a panic while getting his ass beat.
You panicked.
Your Javelin locked up.
What do I do?
Which I guess was enough for him to steal the legendary Javelin and then side with the Monitor and Dominion. A move nearly as dastardly as one Eric Sparrow. Kind of an extreme response to feeling left out, but whatever. Anyways, you'll then have to go and build your own Shield of Dawn to protect you from the Heart of Rage, because the old one doesn't work anyways. You'll confront Owen all suited up and he's like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Go get him, Tiger. So there's like not even a boss fight, and then he's literally out of the story with his now weird looking face. No longer in the fort, no more appearances, not even an email. Bro just takes the legendary Javelin and off. Sure. From here, you take your squad into what is essentially the first tutorial level again to confront the legions of the Dominion and the Monitor. Turns out that Monitor guy finds a way to fuse himself into the Anthem, and so, well, we finally get a proper boss fight. I mean, we've had like Titans and other guys to deal with before, but this one has more than 3 attacks. It's a set piece battle. You'll fly around to hit weak points, move to the next area, get constantly shot down by his annoying dudes because playing the single player means you have waves of nonsense to deal with. Get him to his last phase where he'll suddenly stop fighting at 1/4 of his life remaining because you don't get to deal the finishing blow. Nope, Alec and Faye throw their Strider right into this guy. Friendship trademark saves the day. You cover your friends from the big explosion, fun friendly quip banter, and cue the credits.
So what's next?
Nothing. You said one job.
No, I didn't.
You did. I was there. You were very clear.
I mean,
We did it. Or did we?
Hey, let me show you something. We found this just inside the eastern border. Killed 2 of our team before we were able to put it down. And I mapped the region on it.
Urgoth. You've heard of them.
This could either be a single scout or the beginning of something much, much bigger.
Lest we forget, Anthem's a games as a service, meaning it's time to learn about the Urgoth. Nope. That little stinger there with the alien. This dead body is literally the only instance or visual of an Urgoth in the entirety of Anthem lore.
We'll be in touch.
Unfortunately, that line and a little post-game note telling you to prepare for more would be all of the main narrative Anthem has to offer. So, unlike the Avengers or Suicide Squad, Anthem comes to an abrupt end. But we still got more to tackle. Side quests, 100% trophies, and of course, the prequel graphic novel.
And free sandwiches.
Free sandwiches?
Yeah, I haven't had my lunch yet. I'm starving.
So let's go ahead and knock that out. Coming out over 3 issues between February and May of 2019 would be Anthem Strung Together, Anthem Strong Alone, Stronger Together. These issues serve as a prequel to the video game's events, taking place between 10 and 20 years prior to the start. And I didn't get a physical copy of that, so digital it is. Written in conjunction by Mac Walters and Alexander Freed, who both worked on Anthem, these stories follow some of the side characters from the game. In fact, one of our main characters in the first pages is a freelancer, Ol Yarrow, just 20 years younger. He saves a child named Kismet from a Scar raid on a traveling Strider and brings him back to Fort Tarsus, where he gets adopted by a young Johnny's grandmother. The entire 3-issue run goes at a lightning pace, sometimes with multiple years passing on a single page. And it's all trying to establish a sense of humanity in the seemingly dire world, Coda, showing youth experiencing life before the harsh realities of freelancers, ciphers, and living in a place that I assume wants to kill you. The short story shows Johnny losing family, running out on her own where she's attacked by a random Javelin to then be rescued by a grown-up Kismet fully ciphered out. I actually like that they show what these things are. The concept of cipher was mostly thrown around as a keyword in the game, but in this comic you get to see instances of the training, the weight of the path, and a clear connection between cipher and freelancer. In game it was mostly shown through Owen, who was always like, when's my turn, big bro?
We could probably use a very fabulous Cypher Javelin pilot combo of our own.
Owen, be patient.
They don't show you the mental link ciphers really get, with Kismet apparently experiencing death over and over through the eyes of all of his freelancers. Yeah, it's kind of dark. The final issue depicts the Battle of Freemark referenced in a few codex entries, the time that the Dominion and the Monitor came to mess things up. Stakes are high, a lot of people die, and in the end, we see Johnny repeating the same cycle for the first issue, with her having saved a small child after losing her adoptive brother. This was way better than I thought it would be. The smaller moments in issue 2 with characters talking about their fears, the feelings of helplessness they've gotten from this messed up planet. I am shocked we didn't see even a semblance of this kind of personal character writing in the game itself. It always felt like you were being talked at, and not as a part of the story with individual stakes, and I can see a glimpse of that Bioware writing here. The tie-in graphic novel can go either way, with most of the ones we've covered being subpar, or whatever Balan Wonderworld's entire story in the book was. But when it comes to missed potential, Anthem Strong Alone, Stronger Together was a total surprise. If anything, it made me care about ciphers way more.
Have you ever fought anything out there? Scars, a chimera. I would learn along the way.
Now, finally, what we've all been waiting for. Well, kind of. I really like to see what these gassy types of games have beyond the platinum trophy, and with Anthem, there's actually a decent amount of content that you can do besides just Zerg rushing the end of the story. Although this one was significantly shorter than other games we've done. Probably a bit of luck and a little bit of cheese in it, but let's take a look at the side quests, gameplay challenges, and post-game content. Going into Anthem, I knew I wanted to play it efficiently so I could hit the deadline. The basics all boil down to a few things. Do every stage 1 weapon challenge, as in getting 50 kills with each weapon type, and then completing 4 missions with each gear. Each Javelin has 3 gear slots, with 2 to 4 exclusive items per slot. The problem is, the type of loot you get is completely randomized, meaning you might need to spend hours grinding just to try and get a specific type of, interceptor gear to drop. This happened for my editor, who could not for the life of him get one piece to drop, and there's no way to buy a base version of it in-game. In fact, there is a crafting system to make your own versions of the gear, but that only unlocks once you finish the challenge. A conundrum, or you could be me and have them all drop no problem. Sorry. So I was playing through the story while doing the weapon challenges, which honestly wasn't super exciting. Some weapon types are way less viable than others. The machine gun sniper doesn't feel great, and some of the pistols are underwhelming. Other challenges include collectibles, hitting rocks, grabbing glyphs, and interacting with small things in the background. This was actually the slowest and most annoying thing for me, but specifically because of their intel system. Let me explain. Most collectibles are on the maps at all time. In order to get the trophy Bastion collectibles, you need to fulfill tons of other requirements, like geologist, get 200 rocks, botanist, 200 compounds. Those aren't too bad, and they spawn pretty regularly. There's also Arcanist archives, which are static one-time pickups for each character. However, the challenges are per account, so you can swap to a different character to pick up ones you've already gotten, and it'll still count towards your total, which might be useful considering there's no easy way to track them besides looking at a few fan-made maps with green dots drawn on them. Can you read this? There's also these big green glyphs, but they're relatively easy to find while flying. The issue are the faction intels you'll find at camps. These do not spawn in missions, and only when you're exploring the open world in free play. Free play is a totally different game type. You'll run into other players while floating around. There's occasionally world events that'll spawn and are required to mess around in during the main campaign when you're looking for tombs. You gotta do 5 world events which spawn with purple icons on the map, and no, the Superman 64 races and strong enemy spawn locations don't count. Anyways, the intel are invisible interactables that spawn at one of these camps. There are specific locations on the world map where there is a chance of one spawning, and a tiny amount where it's guaranteed to spawn. If you boot into free play with its incredibly long loading time, head to the location you want to go and it's not there, try again. If it is, the best way to get this is to fly to its location, fly a specific distance away to make it respawn, and then go back and pick it up again. And that might work. If there's other players in the area that are close, it won't respawn. Sometimes it'll be like, nah, you've had your fill, and that'll be that. Meaning, the most efficient way for me to get, say, the Sentinel intel was to load in front of Fort Tarsus, fly this specific route, grab the item, quick travel back to the fort, rinse, repeat until I had 25. By the way, there's 125 in total. It's a lot. A certain amount of these have some codex entries attached, but it really is nothing but busy work designed to keep you playing. But in actuality, people have released videos trying to map the most efficient way, because it's a pain, and I went the entire game without seeing a single Arcanist intel. Behold, modern trophy hunting. It's not all just making a number go up. Story and character-wise, there's a few set of side missions you can tackle, all representing the different factions. These agent quests are done through Agent Yarrow, Lieutenant Brim, and Arcanist Matthias. Agent Yarrow is an elder freelancer who gives out missions where you do various various freelancer things. Literally, the first one's called What Freelancers Do. You'll usually go to a location on the map, shoot a bunch of dudes, and then finish it up. The Sentinel missions are led by Lieutenant Bryn, a bit of a quirk chungus. Her missions have you going to a location on the map, shooting a bunch of dudes, and then finishing it up. And lastly, Arcanist Mateus has the most development of the three. He's busy doing Arcanist things in his little lab and actually has you turn him into 3 different personalities, like physical versions. Now, get this. His missions usually have you going to a location on the map where you'll then shoot a bunch of dudes and occasionally do a puzzle. As you can tell, there's really not much to this. There's little dialogue trees between missions where a character will drop their lore at you, but the dialogue is usually very superficial and unengaging. This is one of the biggest marks I have against Anthem, really. You want to be able to get sucked into the side content and the narratives that pop up during it. Some of the Dragon Age side stories and companion quests are some of the strongest writing in that franchise. Heck, Bioware set the standard with these, but it's, again, so dry. Matthias' story is the closest it gets to entertaining, mostly because it's like the Three Stooges if it were produced by the Sci-Fi Channel.
Does this mean that Matthias will never be whole again?
Who says we're not whole? Because, dress right? Because it was
Once you finish all of these, you'll gain access to contracts and daily legendary contracts. And this is how you're gonna get loot, which means we're on to everyone's favorite, ye old item level grinding. Anthem has a few methods to increase your number. Upon finishing the game, you'll get access to strongholds, essentially the raids. These are tackled in one of many different difficulties: normal, hard, Grandmaster, all the way up to Grandmaster 3. There's not like different mechanics or anything. It's a numbers difficulty type of deal. You can tell because I joined one randomly, got shot one time and died. Cool. At launch, there were 3 strongholds. The first, Tyrant Mine, a battle against the Scar and a bunch of bugs. The second, the Temple of Scar, more Scar battling. This time you take the fight to their faces. And lastly, the Heart of Rage. So the final boss again, just one where you kill the monitor with your friends instead of the power of friendship.
He's dead.
Beyond a handful of puzzle elements, a brand new boss fight, and the increased number of enemies, these aren't terribly different from normal content, just a bit longer. You do get a ton of loot though. Legendary contracts, on the other hand, were things you could select to get a big bonus to your overall drops with guaranteed legendaries. You see, there's multiple rarities for gears, with higher level stuff being evolutions. The higher the difficulty, the better the gear. So I accidentally quick played into a few random people's Grandmaster 3 rank contract mission, sat in the back hiding, popping out for a headshot for like 1% damage, and walked out with gear 3 times better than I walked in with. Sick. And all of this, of course, being a mission where you go to a location and shoot some dudes. Is that stolen valor? Sure, but hey, it enabled me to get big and strong real quick so I could knock out the Masterwork Javelin achievement, find the last Vista I needed for the Bastion collectible trophy, and well, that'd be that. That's 100%. Beyond this, Anthem did actually receive a handful of updates in the year it was supported. Browsing the website, you can see they did a lot of quality of life stuff, including making collectibles more visible. I thought it was bad now, it must have been way worse. One more stronghold was added, the Sunken Cell. This one actually has a nice visual variety with a set of puzzles that are once again impossible to see. What am I looking at? The finale is a unique boss design with a cool set piece visual of a like Moses splitting water ass boss fight, but that would be the last stronghold. There were plans for another Longfall Ruins, but you know,
they say all men are created equal, but you look at me and you look at Anthem, and you can see that statement is not true.
Now, there were a few more patches, including seasonal and weekly content, as well as Ice Tide, where they covered Fort Tarsis and Christmas lights, put snow everywhere, and had a few world events with it too. More time trials, more stuff like seasonal strongholds, where you'd play for a high score, ones where the boss usually dies in like 10 seconds. The final update, 1.7.0, when they put the game on pause, added a weekly rotation of gameplay modes of everything that they'd run so far. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to play when some of this was in rotation, specifically the Season of Skulls and Ice Tide stuff, but they kept this rolling without saying a word for nearly 6 years. And I do mean without saying a word. There was no news between the announcement of maintenance mode and shutdown. EA and Bioware completely abandoned the project, and what you see here is all that she wrote. That was all of the content Anthem had to offer. Sudden, I know. I mean, there's a last set of critical missions Eruptions, the Legend of the Legionnaires, which has you do a bunch of stuff like 100 world events. Nah, I'm good.
No, I don't think I will.
But all of this means that all you Owemaniacs out there will just have to embrace his last words.
I'm sensing a whole load of Dominion Furies heading this way right now. Ooh, they seem particularly nasty. You should be fine though. Good luck, hero!
Oh, you son of a bitch!
So we've reached the end. Anthem sure was a video game, one totally jostled around by lack of direction, publisher deadline expectations, and a whole bunch of studio restructuring in the 7-year development cycle. At its very core, it's a fun mechanical video game, and if it were released as a run-of-the-mill looter shooter by a different company, I don't think it would have been slammed as hard. But the fact is, this was Bioware. This is a game with the weight of the Mass Effect trilogy and KOTOR on its shoulders. That studio is famous for showing and not telling with its character motives and plot beats, but Anthem relies a whole lot on just name dropping and proclaiming that things are happening. There's only a single moment in the game that I felt was a heartfelt interaction, one with Faye prior to the final battle where you're sitting down on a ledge, but the style of cutscene direction is still off. I feel like the first-person navigation in the hubs was a major mistake. I also feel like there's certain things that shouldn't have been relegated to codex entries. For instance, sometimes you'll have an argument with Owen that'll seemingly fade away, but then you'll receive an email in-game with a more realistic depiction of the insecurity he was facing. But again, you'll probably miss the notification for this as it's tiny in the corner, the codex is a pain to navigate, and you might not even care about this dude, which, like, fair. But it's not all bad. I thought the visual style of Anthem was really interesting. I loved its use of combining science fiction concepts with fantasy. This is also in the music. A lot of the Javelins have a Final Fantasy Magitech thing going on, and it's hard not to love that. Also, I think that someone on the staff was a wrestling fan, considering some of my legendary guns have names like Rainmaker or Papa Pump, cause you know.
This goes to all my freaks out there! Big Papa Pump is your hookup!
It was very clear that EA did not care about this game when they were shutting it down. They didn't announce an official time of day. But heck, the FAQ had multiple dates listed. It was officially on the 12th of January, but one QA response said the 13th. I unfortunately did miss the official shutdown of the servers because it happened at the most random time, like 10:02 a.m. Monday morning. But thankfully I was able to spend a little bit in the area lobby, hanging out with other players for a bit. People jumping around, saying thanks, and spamming the same 2 and 3 emotes because everything else was locked behind in-game currency, which I totally forgot to bring up this entire video, the microtransactions. It was all cosmetic stuff like armor, emotes, random graphics, and you'd buy them using shards, which cost real money, but by the time I started playing, the purchasing of that had been disabled. So what I've learned is slapping microtransactions into a game like this when people are already paying $60, just like the Avengers or Suicide Squad, is not a great idea. All in all, I don't think Anthem is a terrible game. It's just not finished. It clearly wasn't ready to be released in 2019, and I think giving Bioware the games as a service assignment is just misguided. Even still, I'm sad that you can't play it anymore. The idea that this physical game disc is completely worthless, just a coaster. This has become an argument against video games as an art form. Just inaccessible data and a title screen that says error. There is apparently a group of people looking into making a private server for Anthem, which would at least put it a step above Concord, and I hope that they can get something running for all the fans, especially like those who are hanging out just trying to say goodbye on a Sunday night. Project Dylan is going to be remembered, just maybe not in the way they probably wanted it to be. Anthem was a massive disappointment, but its little glimpses of brilliance tell me it deserved so much better. Mostly because still to this day, no one's gotten an Iron Man video game right. And that includes the Avengers. Come on now, let's make it happen. All you gotta do is like, just tighten up the graphics a little bit.
We just finished level 3 and need to tighten up the graphics a little bit.
Great.
And so there you have it. Anthem beaten 100%, the comic book read, and everything done that I could, because you can't anymore. This one kind of bums me out, because with the exception of like Babylon's Fall, all of these 100% videos we've done are games that do still exist and you can still play in some form or shape, which I guess is just the cost of modern gaming these days, which is really dumb. Although I think it's crazy that you could still play Brink. Also, as of the other day, if you are interested in some of the behind the scenes stuff, Anthem's executive producer released a 3.5 hour long post-mortem video talking about like everything, which I do recommend checking out. We're gonna be doing a lot more of these 100% videos this year, as there's been a lot of games that have recently been running out of gas. So if there's some that you think that I should check out in the future, let me know down in the comments below. definitely looking at Avatar right now. If you like today's video, check out the sponsor Zen Market and use code Austin_Eruption, or you can support the channel over on Patreon. Pick up a shirt over at the Pixel Empire, or just keep on watching. We're 13 years into doing this YouTube thing, and I hope we can keep the ball rolling. Either ways, thank you all so much for watching. I've been Austin, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Benna Oswald, Blackfoot Ferret, Blake Thomas, Cheeks, Clark Fox, Chris Shelton, DX Buster, Dylan Snyder, Fragile Traveler, Hey Quiggles, Jay Roos, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Kevin Zanowski, Nocturnal Nix, Pierre, Platinum Rose, Pacha Bear, Rare Find It, Ryan Siri, and Vox. Thank you all so much for your generous support. And so that's the first video of 2026. This is coming out at a weird time because they suddenly decided to sunset the game with only like 3 months to spare, so I decided to go ahead and hop on Anthem. That comic book really showed me that missed potential. What games are y'all playing in the new year? I've been playing a lot of tabletop stuff actually, like Gundam TCG and recently Warhammer 40k. I got an Eldar army. It's a problem. Either way, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.